Welcome to Duo Reads, where we decode deep ideas and break down big books one page at a time. Today, we're diving into excerpts from a really transformative work, Your Money or Your Life. Now, if your first thought is, oh, another finance book, I'd really urge you to set that aside for a moment. This isn't just about, managing spreadsheets or sticking rigidly to a budget. Its central premise, as we're about to explore, is actually far more profound. It's about aligning your money not just with your bank account, but with your deepest values and, well, ultimately your very life. Our mission for this conversation is to unpack the core insights and the practical steps from this powerful work. We're here to guide you through what really is a paradigm shift, I think, in how you think about earning, spending, and, truly living. Our goal is to help you gain knowledge quickly, thoroughly, find those aha moments, and definitely steer clear that feeling of information overload. So, are you ready to rethink your relationship with money? I know I am. I'm genuinely eager to see what new perspectives come out of this exploration.
It's such an important subject, and the book frames it in a way that really does resonate, I find. It encourages us, to consider the deeper implications of our financial choices. Moving beyond just the surface stuff, what's particularly insightful is how it gets into the why behind our habits. That often leads to some, surprising realizations about our own motivations.
That's a crucial distinction, yeah. And speaking of rethinking, the book kicks off with this really powerful idea about the modern get-ahead race. Bill McKibben in his foreword puts it like this: "Now as never before, it's time to stop trying to get ahead in a race that is both fixed and futile and figure out how to organize your life so that it can be your life." He continues, "Your one precious life lived for yourself, for your community, and for your planet." That really strikes at the heart of it, doesn't it? It suggests that the traditional path, the one we're told leads to success, might actually be leading us further away from what we truly want.
It certainly does. And if you connect that to the bigger picture, it highlights this deep-seated dissatisfaction lots of people feel. Despite achieving what society calls material success, there's often this nagging feeling that something is missing. This points to a fundamental mismatch, really, between our relentless pursuit of more money and our actual search for genuine fulfillment. We're chasing a finish line that keeps moving, or maybe a finish line that wasn't really ours to begin with.
Yeah, it's like we're all on this treadmill, right? Running faster and faster, but not actually getting anywhere we truly want to be. And the numbers, well, they seem to back that up.
Indeed. We're seeing this pervasive trend where people are working more, often much more, but enjoying life less. A 2015 OECD study found that nearly 12% of Americans are working 50 hours or more per week. That's significant. And that same year, a Conference Board study found less than half of Americans were actually satisfied with their jobs. So this paints a pretty clear picture of what the book calls a kind of national disease, really stemming from how we earn money. One really interesting concept the book introduces is jobism.
Jobism, what's that exactly?
It's basically this hidden social hierarchy,
What?
based purely on what you do for money. It's why roles like, say, stay-at-home parents or teachers are often kind of devalued compared to doctors or lawyers, even if their impact on society or individuals is just as profound, maybe even more so. It's this unconscious sizing up we do, and it subtly influences our self-worth, our interactions.
That's a powerful insight. And it's not just about job satisfaction either, is it? This whole pursuit of more also feeds into this massive debt crisis that kind of locks us into the cycle.
Oh, absolutely. By late 2017, consumer debt had soared past $3.7 trillion. To put that in perspective, that's over $11,000 for every single person in the country, man, woman, child. This mountain of debt, mortgages, car loans, student loans, credit cards, it acts like a massive shackle, It makes the 9-to-5 routine basically mandatory for so many people. It creates this perpetual loop. The book paints a really vivid picture of this. Imagine your weekend. It's not about rest, it's about chasing errands, maybe making impulse buys for that quick hit of satisfaction. Cleaners, grocery store, the mall, often fueled by credit cards. And then you're bombarded by ads promising happiness if you just buy more. This constant consumption tracks us. It demands more money, which reinforces that feeling of being stuck on the treadmill.
Right, so you work all week just to pay for the things you bought to make the weekend feel a bit better.
Exactly, which just leads to more debt and needing to work even more. It's a cycle.
It's a vivid picture of, making a living, but maybe losing out on actually living. And this perpetual loop, it's not just impacting our personal lives and finances. It has these huge unseen costs for the planet, too. What's interesting here is that this whole idea of consumerism, it's not like innate to us, is it? It's not how humans just naturally behave.
No, not at all. Consumerism, as we know it, is really a 20th century invention, a direct result of the Industrial Revolution. By the early 1920s, think about it, machinery had become incredibly efficient at meeting basic human needs, and economic activity actually started to slow down. People quite simply felt they had enough.
Had enough. That sounds almost revolutionary today.
Well, it alarmed two groups in American society back then. First, the moralists, who kind of believed idle hands do the devil's work, saw leisure as potentially debasing. And second, the industrialists, who worried that reduced demand would halt economic growth. They needed people to keep buying stuff.
And that's where figures like Victor Lebeau come in. Right. I remember reading about him. In 1955, this U.S. retailing analyst was pretty blunt about it. He observed that our enormously productive economy demands that we make consumption our way of life, that we convert the buying and use of goods into rituals, that we seek our spiritual satisfaction, our ego satisfaction in consumption. He explicitly said, we need things consumed, burned up, worn out, replaced, and discarded at an ever-increasing rate. Wow. That's basically the blueprint for the more is better mentality we still live with, isn't it? It explains why we trade in the car every few years, always need new clothes, crave bigger houses, upgrade our phones just because a new one exists. It's this relentless drive for novelty.
Precisely. It's deeply ingrained in the North American psyche, often linked, maybe unconsciously, to that historical idea of manifest destiny, this sense of limitless expansion, even if it's just expanding into our closets and garages. This mentality fuels that constant desire for novelty, for more. But this constant consumption, it comes with this massive environmental toll, an unseen destruction, as the book calls it. Way back in 1987, the UN World Commission on Environment and Development warned that consumption patterns in the developed world were a primary driver of global environmental damage. And yet, honestly, not much has fundamentally changed in our overall approach. We're still often acting as if our spending choices are purely personal, ignoring these profound ripple effects.
It really makes you wonder, why do we keep going despite the warnings? The data is stark. Like the ecological footprint metric from the Global Footprint Network. It measures the Earth's resources embedded in everything we buy. And it shows that even, careful, conscious North Americans would require 4 Earths if everyone consumed like them.
Yeah.
But we only have one planet. This creates what the book calls ecological debt, which, unlike personal debt that you can theoretically repay, has no such mechanism. We've borrowed from future generations, from the planet itself, and they have no voice in the matter.
So, as the Pogonomics principle puts it, referencing that old Pogo comic strip, we have met the enemy and he is us.
Yeah.
Our demand for more, better, and different stuff is what's driving the pollution, the resource depletion. But here's where it gets really interesting and actually hopeful. The book argues that streamlining your lifestyle for your own happiness also dramatically cuts down the amount of destruction that is done in your name. It's this powerful double win. Creative frugality, finding joy in enough, benefits both your personal finances and the planet.
That's huge.
Yeah.
It's not a sacrifice, it's a synergy.
Exactly. We don't have to choose between our well-being and the planet's. In fact, they're deeply linked.
That realization really does shift everything. It's not a trade-off, it's a win-win. And this leads us directly into redefining fulfillment, moving beyond that false promise of just having more stuff. The core idea here is presented as the fulfillment curve. Can you break that down?
Yeah, the fulfillment curve, it's such a helpful visual, really, for understanding our relationship with money and happiness. It basically charts the connection between how fulfilled we feel and the amount of money we spend. Think about it. Early in life, more possessions did genuinely mean more fulfillment. When you were cold, a blanket brought warmth, right? When hungry, food brought satisfaction. Basic needs were met. Our minds logged these instances, deeply embedding this belief. Have a need, look outside yourself, get stuff, get fulfillment.
Oh yeah, I totally remember that feeling as a kid. The sheer joy of a new toy or my first bike really felt like peak fulfillment back then.
Exactly. And our parents, hopefully being responsible, taught us these things cost money. So the rule in our heads evolved. Need, look outside yourself, get money, get stuff, get fulfillment. We got allowances, learned we could purchase happiness ourselves. This deeply ingrained pattern continued as we moved into, well, outright luxuries. A car, for instance. It's a luxury for most of the world, but for many of us, that first car becomes this lifelong love affair. The first trip away from home, college, our first apartment, each brought a thrill. But subtly, almost without us noticing, the thrill started costing more per dollar, and the high wore off faster. What's compelling here is that despite this diminishing return, we barely noticed the curve had started to level out. We just kept going, chasing that initial feeling.
And then it seems it often starts to actually decline. More money doesn't just level off satisfaction. It can lead to less fulfillment.
Precisely. As people acquired more houses, jobs, family responsibilities, more money often brought more worry. There were more time and energy commitments climbing the ladder, maybe more time away from family, more to lose if you were robbed, more taxes, accountants' fees, remodeling bills, all those subscription bills, internet, TV, phone, even just keeping the kids happy bills pile up. This leads to that critical moment, that is this all question. The book mentions Rachel Z., a successful saleswoman working 70 hours a week. She had a comfortable home, all the trimmings, but still felt something was missing. She said she and many others she knew felt similarly let down. The question became, do I have to work and then retire, worn out, to be put out to pasture? To do nothing then but to try to spend money I saved up and to waste my time till my life is over? That perfectly captures the point where the curve levels out and then, inevitably declines into actual dissatisfaction.
That feeling is so relatable for so many people, I think. And this idea of things beyond the peak of the curve where fulfillment actually drops. That's what the book calls clutter, right?
That's exactly right. Clutter is defined as anything that's excess for you. Anything that doesn't serve you, yet takes up space in your world.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily just physical mess, although that's often part of it. It's about anything superfluous that drains your energy or your resources, whether it's physical stuff, commitments you don't value, or even mental baggage.
So it's not just the stuff we can physically see.
Yeah.
The book talks about those gazing as pin drawers, and attics, basements, garages, closets, storage units, all these places filled with projects we'll probably never finish or products we'll likely never use. For listeners who might be new to the term, a gazingus pin, it's the book's kind of charming way of describing any unnecessary gadget, impulse buy, or doodad. Stuff that might give a fleeting thrill but ultimately offers very little lasting value. It's often the unseen stuff that piles up and creates this psychological cost.
Exactly. Ignoring that clutter can fill you with a sense of shame. Sorting through it can bring it guilt. And, quickly disposing of clothes after only wearing them a few times can leave this vague feeling of dissatisfaction, of superficiality, not to mention the environmental impact contributing to landfills. It's a subtle but persistent drain on our well-being and, frankly, on the planet.
Okay, so what's the antidote to all this clutter? The book suggests embracing enough. But what exactly does enough mean here? It's clearly not about deprivation or scarcity.
Oh, not at all. Enough is described as lightening up and opening up space for something new to happen. It's framed as a wide and stable plateau offering alertness, creativity, and freedom. From this viewpoint, being suffocated under a mountain of clutter that you have to store, clean, move, get rid of, and pay for, that's actually a fate worse than dearth, worse than having too little.
That makes so much sense. It's about finding that sweet spot, that balance, and this concept of simple living, or enough. It has deep historical roots too, doesn't it? Especially in the American context.
It definitely does. That urge to purge, as the book calls it, has shown up throughout history. Think about movements like Puritanism, the writings of Thoreau, the Quakers, and more recently things like minimalism or the whole tidying up phenomenon. The book calls it enough because it really emphasizes that there's no single universal standard for it. It's not rigidly less is more or about achieving a specific minimalist aesthetic, like a single flower in a spotless room. It's more about achieving that Goldilocks feeling of just rightness. Nothing in excess, but everything you truly want and need. Everyone's enough looks different. One person's treasure is genuinely another person's trash or clutter. It's a really personal journey of self-discovery, and the result is this profound sense of lightness and clarity.
Okay, so we've explored the why, the motivation for change, understanding the trap of consumerism, and the promise of finding enough. Now let's get into the how. The foundational steps the book outlines. The first one is about making peace with the past. What does that entail, financially speaking?
Right. This initial step is all about creating a clear financial balance sheet. It's essentially an inventory of everything you've ever earned and what you currently have to show for it. So you list all your assets. That's everything you own that has monetary value: real estate, savings, investments, cars, even stuff you could sell at a garage sale. And then you list all your liabilities. That's everything you owe: loans, outstanding bills, credit card debt, student loans, mortgages. If your house is an asset, its mortgage is a liability. You tally it all up.
So it's about seeing the complete financial picture, the good, the bad, and the ugly. What's the real power in doing this? It sounds like it could be daunting.
It can be, but the power is immense. First, it brings undeniable clarity to your financial past. No more guessing. Second, it reviews your tree net worth, which honestly can often be surprising, sometimes better, sometimes worse than expected. Third, it actually builds confidence in your ability to earn wages because you see the total sum of money that has flowed through your life up to this point. And maybe most powerfully, it helps you release skeletons from the past. Any secrets, maybe lies, or just avoidance that might be distorting your current relationship with money. The book shares this great anecdote about a divorced woman in her mid-30s. She saw herself as dependent, unworthy, but by digging into her past earnings from various odd jobs, she realized she'd actually earned over $50,000 during her marriage. This single step completely transformed her self-image from unworthy to a competent wage earner. It gave her the confidence to apply for and get a job paying twice what she thought she was worth.
Wow, that's genuinely powerful. It sounds like this isn't just a numbers exercise, then it's deeply emotional, too.
Oh, it absolutely is. When you're creating this balance sheet, it's really common for a whole range of feelings to surface. Sadness, grief, maybe nostalgia, hope, guilt, shame, embarrassment, anger. The book really encourages approaching this with a dispassionate and compassionate attitude. Just allow these emotions to come up without judging them. It helps lighten both the physical clutter and the emotional baggage. It's a process of acknowledging your financial history without getting attached to it or beating yourself up about it.
Okay, so once you've made peace with the past, the next step is being in the present. And this is done by tracking your life energy. This is where that core concept of money as life energy really comes into play, isn't it?
It is. This is fundamental. The book defines money simply as something you trade the hours of your life for. It's a profound shift in perspective, really. Instead of just seeing money as dollars and cents on a screen or in your wallet, you start seeing it as units of your irreplaceable time, your finite life force.
Okay, so then it gets into calculating your real hourly wage. Yeah. And this is much more than just looking at your paycheck stub, right? You have to factor in all these hidden job-related expenses and also those hidden job-related hours.
Precisely. Your official salary, say $25 an hour, often doesn't reflect the true cost of earning that money in terms of your life energy. You absolutely need to account for all the expenses and time commitments that are directly tied to your job. Think about your commute. It's not just the gas or the train fare, it's the wear and tear on your car, parking fees, tolls, maintenance, and crucially, all those hours you spend doing the commute, stuck in traffic or on the train, that's unpaid time related to the job. Or consider the costuming, the clothes, makeup, briefcases, maybe even shaving costs, things bought specifically for work to maintain a professional facade. And then there's the time and money spent on daily decompression, that hour you need to unwind after work, maybe the beer or martini to de-stress. Or the escape entertainment movies, bars, subscriptions, game systems you might feel you need just to vacate from the job mentally, even vacations, if they're primarily about recovering from the job rather than genuine restoration, job-related illness, too stress-induced conditions, or even just wanting time off. Plus other things like ongoing education, books, tools, conferences needed for the job. All these eat into your real earnings.
Wow, when you list it all out like that, it really paints a much clearer picture of what a job truly costs you, beyond just the hours you're paid for. The book illustrates how that $25 an hour salary could easily become, effectively, just $10 an hour after factoring in all these hidden costs in time and money.
It's a critical insight, and the core action here is converting dollars into hours of life energy.
Yeah.
The book challenges you, for every purchase, to ask, is this item worth, say, 120 minutes of my life energy? So that $20 Gizingas pen, that little impulse buy, is it really worth 2 hours of your precious life? 2 hours of commuting, dealing with work stress, whatever it is your job entails. This perspective forces you to see the real trade-offs you're making every single day with your most valuable, non-renewable resource in your time.
That's such a profound way to look at every single purchase. It's not just $20, it's 2 hours of my actual life. I imagine this can lead to some pretty significant realizations for people.
Oh, absolutely. Mark H's story in the book illustrates this perfectly. He was a project manager in construction, pretty unhappy, but felt like income just equaled expenses, Trapped. When he calculated his real hourly wage, factoring everything in, he was shocked. He realized nearly half of what he earned was spent on the job itself. Gas, oil changes, truck repairs, lunches out, a little here, a little there, as he put it, mostly unrecoverable. This insight was revolutionary for him. He figured out he could actually stay home, work part-time, and save money by earning only half his former income because he'd cut out all those job-related costs. This freed him up to pursue his real passion, becoming a counselor and therapist. He and his wife actually felt less financial stress, even on less income, because they were healing their relationship with money, not just chasing dollars. This step truly clarifies your motives for working and choosing jobs. For some, it literally doubles their net earnings per hour just by highlighting and reducing those job-related drains.
What's fascinating here is how these initial steps, once you really grasp them, seem to unlock so much potential for significant change. And that brings us to step 3. Where is it all going? This is about the monthly tabulation, tracking every cent, right?
Yes, exactly. And the book describes this step, interestingly, as a spiritual discipline. Just like ancient and modern practices use techniques, meditation, mindfulness to train the mind to be here now, tracking every single cent that comes into or goes out of your life serves a similar purpose for your finances. It brings you squarely into the present moment of your financial reality. It fosters this powerful mindfulness around your money.
So it's not about rigid budgeting in the traditional sense, but more about mindful awareness.
Yeah.
And what's the best way to actually do this tracking? Is there a specific app or notebook they recommend?
The book is really clear on this. There's no single right way. Whatever works best for you is genuinely the best method. Some people prefer a little pocket-sized memo book. Others use an appointment book they already carry. And of course, with today's tech, many people track on their phones or computers, maybe linking bank accounts or using debit credit cards paid off monthly, ideally for automatic, up-to-date records. The key is flexibility, not adherence to a specific tool. Find what makes it insightful, not a burden. For example, the book mentions Mike L., a contractor. He initially tried tracking every single penny manually and found it overwhelming, so he switched to using a debit card for almost everything and let his bank feed the data into his financial program. That simplified things massively for him. Then there's Karen E., described as a natural tracker. For her, this process enabled her and her husband to actually live half the year in Europe on a houseboat. So the takeaway is, find your system.
That's amazing flexibility.
Yeah.
And it's not just about the method, but the categories you use, too. The book stresses personalizing your spending categories to reflect your actual life, not just standard budget norms.
Exactly right. Standard budgeting categories, like housing should be 25-35% of income or food 20%. They might push you down a conventional path, but they often don't capture unique situations or your real priorities. Consider Justin's example from the book. He trades 10 hours a week of household work for a room. He's saving to buy a camper to live in while traveling the U.S. and blogging. He plans to learn foraging and hunting to cut food costs. How do you fit that into a standard budget template? You can't, really. This step encourages you to create categories that honestly reflect your life. Where do lottery tickets fit in your spending? Is liquor, food, entertainment, or maybe a drug category for you? These are what the book calls moments of truth. They force you to confront your reality without judgment, just clarity.
I can imagine those being very illuminating, maybe slightly uncomfortable moments.
Mm-hmm.
And distinguishing job-related expenses from personal ones, even within the same category like transportation, seems absolutely critical for getting that accurate, real hourly wage calculation, too.
It is. It's essential for accuracy. If you use the same car for commuting and pleasure drives, you need to split the costs, maybe by mileage. Similarly, separate your cell phone costs, work use versus personal calls. Even within a category like medical, you might create subcategories. Sickness care, wellness activities, health insurance premiums, maybe different types of drugs. This granular approach, this attention to detail, it transforms more than just your relationship with money. It fosters deeper self-understanding. The book also makes the point that every month is an unusual month when it comes to larger, less frequent expenses like annual insurance premiums, car repairs, or capital purchases like appliances. Instead of being constantly surprised by these, you learn to anticipate them, take these extraordinary expenses in stride, and crucially pay for them with cash you've set aside, not by going into debt.
Right, breaking that cycle of surprise debt. And what about tracking income? Is that as revealing as tracking where the money goes?
Generally less so, mainly because calculating your real hourly wage in Step 2 already provides such a powerful analysis of your primary income stream. However, you still meticulously track all money flowing in, and you categorize it. Wages, tips, interest earned, side hustles, maybe dog walking, selling clutter on eBay investment income, gifts received. It's about recognizing all your financial inflows, painting that complete, honest picture of your personal financial ecosystem.
What's truly impactful here, I think, are those stories of transformation from people who have actually gone through this tracking process.
Yes, the book shares several compelling ones. There's Don S., who was a fan of Mr. Money Mustache. He found that just tracking his income and expenses clearly led him to naturally swap expensive restaurant lunches for home cooking, saving significant money without feeling deprived at all. Then there are Maddie and Tom C., she's a truck driver, he's an accountant. They combined their finances and calculated a joint real hourly wage of just $10.23 an hour. This meant every single dollar they spent represented nearly 6 minutes of their combined life energy working. That's a powerful motivator. And Mary and Donna M., both computer programmers who shared a passion for music but had very different spending styles. Doing their monthly tabulations together initially caused tension, so they decided to separate their finances for tracking purposes. To Mary's surprise, having her own accounts gave her this wonderful feeling of autonomy and reconnected her with her own strength and independence. It paved the way for her later leaving her job to teach piano. And Elaine H., who was a steady earner but also a heavy spender. By diligently applying these tracking principles, she managed to cut her spending in half while actually increasing her quality of life and self-esteem. So the goal, ultimately, isn't to force you into a rigid budget someone else dictates. It's to foster self-discovery and insight. As the book says, you are creating your own way.
Okay, so once you have this incredibly clear picture, your past earnings, your real hourly wage, and exactly where every cent is going month by month, it's time for the really transformative part. Step 4. This is where you ask those 3 questions that will transform your life. These are all about reflecting on your monthly spending, right?
Exactly. And these aren't just casual throwaway questions. They are designed for deep, honest, introspective reflection on your monthly tabulation results. You look at each spending category, each significant expenditure, and you ask, first, did I receive fulfillment, satisfaction, and value in proportion to the life energy spent? This really gets you thinking, was the joy, the benefit, the utility I got from this truly worth the hours of my life I had to trade for it?
So it's like checking the return on investment, but not just in financial terms, in life terms. That's a powerful lens to apply.
It really is. The second question is this expenditure of life energy in alignment with my values and life purpose? This one drills down into integrity. Does your spending actually reflect what you say is important to you? Does it align with the person you want to be, the life you want to live? And the third question, how might this expenditure change if I didn't have to work for money? This encourages you to imagine a life where paid work is optional. It helps reveal which expenses are truly essential or bring you joy versus those tied to your job, keeping up appearances, or simply filling time because you're stressed or bored.
And the idea is to look for patterns in the answers, especially where you mark things with a minus, indicating it wasn't fulfilling or wasn't aligned with your values. But it's crucial that this is no shame, no blame, right? It's purely for clarity.
That's such a critical point. This isn't about beating yourself up or making rigid resolutions to do better next month. It's purely about gaining insight. Awareness is the first step to change. The book gives the example of Hal M. He realized, through this questioning, how much his expensive office space, costing $2,900 a month, was basically a mega gazingas pin. It wasn't providing proportional value since he did most business remotely, so he moved his office home, cutting that cost down to $750 a month. Big saving. He also realized how much he was spending on his kids' entertainment out of habit, but found less expensive, actually more fulfilling alternatives, like free library workshops and just walks in the park. His overall cost of living plummeted from $4,500 a month down to between $900 and $1,200, directly linking his search for purpose with concrete changes in his spending. Mary, the programmer, also found that her impulse clothing purchases weren't bringing commensurate fulfillment. Once she saw that clearly through the questions, she simply stopped buying clothes she didn't truly need without feeling deprived at all.
That leads perfectly into this whole discussion around the purpose of work itself. The book really deconstructs what it calls the job charming illusion, doesn't it? This idea that our job should be our everything.
It really does. We often, consciously or unconsciously, expect our jobs to provide it all. Our identity, a sense of belonging, maybe even romance or adventure, status, meaning. Essentially, we expect our jobs to function as a substitute for things like religion and family used to provide. We chase this mythical Mr. or Mrs. Right job, believing it will fulfill all our deepest needs. But the book argues this is an illusion. It's a burden no single job can realistically bear.
So what's the hard truth then, according to the book, about the intrinsic purpose of paid employment?
The book states it very plainly. The only intrinsic purpose of paid employment is getting paid. That's it. All those other desirable rewards, the emotional satisfaction, intellectual stimulation, psychological growth, even spiritual fulfillment, these are all equally available and often much more profoundly experienced in unpaid activities, things you choose to do. If we confuse getting paid with finding fulfillment, we risk that ultimate deathbed regret. Looking back and thinking, why did I spend so much of my precious life energy at that job?
Oof. That's a profound thought to sit with for a moment. And it really pushes us to think about finding our true purpose beyond just the paycheck. I love the quotes the book uses here, like Mary Oliver's famous line, "Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life?" And Howard Thurman's advice, "Don't ask yourself what the world needs. Ask yourself what makes you come alive, and then go do it. Because what the world needs is people who have come alive." So, how do we find this purpose that goes beyond simply acquiring stuff or climbing a career ladder?
Well, the book suggests 3 potential doorways to discovering or clarifying your purpose, moving beyond that material acquisition focus. First, work with your passion. What truly makes you feel alive? What activities make you lose track of time? Don M., the programmer we mentioned, loved music. The program helped him see how his life energy wasn't aligned with that passion and guided him towards realigning it. Second, work with your pain. What suffering have you experienced personally or witnessed that gives you unique wisdom and compassion to offer others facing similar struggles? Helping others, the book suggests, is deeply healing and purposeful. This transforms personal adversity into a source of strength and service. And third, work with what is at hand. This isn't necessarily about finding one single grand world-changing project. It's about recognizing that all acts of service, however small, contribute to the good of the whole. Taking dinner to a sick neighbor, helping a child learn to read, advocating for the homeless in your community. These small acts, when done with great passion or love, can fill life with profound meaning.
So it's about intentionally aligning our actions, our spending, our time with our deepest values. And that monthly tabulation, those 3 questions, they actually help us measure that alignment. It's like a powerful feedback loop for living with integrity.
Yes, precisely. You write down your life purpose, even if it's just a rough draft initially, it will evolve. And you use it as a measuring stick. Question 2 from the monthly tabulation, is this expenditure of life energy in alignment with my values and life purpose becomes this faithful, non-judgmental guide. It gently nudges you towards greater integrity, and in doing so helps you further define and refine what your true purpose actually is. This process naturally leads, the book argues, towards developing widening circles of compassion, as Albert Einstein described it, moving beyond purely personal desires to embrace a sense of connection with all living creatures in nature. You start asking that question, what if everybody, regarding your spending choices? It links your personal finance decisions directly to a sense of global responsibility, realizing your individual choices are part of a much larger tapestry.
These transformations sound incredibly inspiring, and the book offers some wonderful real-life examples of people who have really walked this path, haven't they?
Oh, definitely. They share several great stories. Take Grant Sabatier, who's known online as Millennial Money. He had this wake-up call when he was broke, literally couldn't afford to buy a burrito. He set this incredibly audacious goal, reach $1 million by age 30. His secret wasn't some magic bullet. It was changing his mindset fundamentally to paying yourself first and immediately diving into educating himself about money. His story just demonstrates the sheer power of shifting your perspective and finding a strong purpose, turning a crisis into a catalyst for massive change. Then there are Amy and Jim D., known for their zine, The Tightwad Gazette. They combine their naturally thrifty habits with immense creativity. They saved enough to buy a rural farmhouse, raise a large family, proving that those common dreams are truly within reach without feeling deprived or resorting to extreme consumerism. Their journey is a real testament to the power of resourceful, intentional living.
Those stories are so powerful because they show how varied the path to fulfillment can be, and that it's definitely not tied to excessive spending or conventional success metrics.
Exactly. And another great example, Kathy and Langdon L. She was a physician, he was a former teacher. They reached a point where they could retire from paid employment and also from full-time parenting. They then channeled their energy into creating an eco-village, focusing on sustainability and community building. Eventually, Langdon even became the mayor of their town. Their journey really exemplifies aligning financial independence with a purpose that extends far beyond individual accumulation. It shows how financial freedom can become a powerful springboard for deeper community engagement and ecological stewardship. These stories aren't meant as rigid blueprints, do exactly this. They're offered as inspiration, showing what becomes possible when you consciously redefine your relationship with money and align it with your deepest values and purpose.
Okay, so we've journeyed from making peace with the past to understanding the present and connecting spending with purpose. Now let's talk about the income side of the equation. This is step 7. Valuing your life energy, maximizing income. What's the key shift in perspective here? Because it's clearly not about just chasing more is better in the traditional sense, is it?
No, not at all. The critical shift here is about increasing your income not for status or endless consumption, but for freedom. Freedom to be yourself, freedom from financial worry. It's about valuing the precious life energy you invest in your job and consciously seeking to exchange it for the highest pay that's consistent with your health and your integrity. If money equals life energy, then by increasing your income per hour, you effectively increase the amount of life available to you outside of paid work. You accelerate your journey towards financial independence.
So it's really rooted in self-respect and appreciating your own life force rather than simple greed. It seems like a lot of this comes down to attitude. The book talks about overcoming that victim mentality many people have about their earnings.
Exactly. It's easy to feel passive or fatalistic, right? Blaming external forces, the boss, the economy, global competition for your salary level. The book urges you instead to cultivate positive attitudes. Self-respect, pride in your work and contribution, dedication, cooperation, integrity, responsibility, accountability. It emphasizes this powerful idea. Wherever you are working, you're working for yourself. This commitment to excellence, regardless of the specific job, becomes an expression of 100% integrity and self-value. And interestingly, employers often recognize and reward that kind of dedication and ownership.
That really changes the game, doesn't it? Because it means you're not just working for an employer, you're working for your own liberation, your own goals. And the story of Nina N really brings this concept to life.
Nina N's transformation is truly remarkable. She started out as a minimum wage motel maid after a divorce, raising 4 children on her own. Very tough situation. Determined to become financially independent, she began tracking her few expenses diligently, applying the early steps. She then moved to Seattle, and for every temporary position she took, she meticulously calculated her real hourly wage. Within just months, she'd managed to wipe out several $1,000s in debt. But she didn't stop there. By consciously valuing her life energy and actively seeking better pay for her time, she eventually quadrupled her income. She went from being a motel maid to an executive director. Her wall chart, that visual graph of income and expenses we'll talk more about, literally went off the chart as her earnings soared. This wasn't necessarily about working more hours, it was about increasing the value she received for each hour, which ultimately meant, as she put it, her time would be her own again much sooner. This process naturally opens up creative options. Maybe increasing your pay allows you to work part-time, or you find ways to enhance your current job, or you decide to change jobs altogether to find something that better aligns with your newfound sense of value and purpose.
This momentum clearly builds step by step. And it leads us logically to step 8, the crossover point. This sounds like the ultimate goal, maybe the holy grail, of financial independence. What is it exactly?
The crossover point is that specific, definable moment when the income generated passively from your accumulated investment capital becomes higher than your total monthly expenses. It literally means your paid employment officially becomes optional. You no longer have to work for money to cover your living costs. That growing gap between your income, step 7, and your expenses, tracked in step 3, which initially is just savings, transforms over time into capital money that starts making money for you without you needing to trade more hours of your life for it. This concept makes financial independence, or FI, genuinely achievable for, as the book says, anyone and everyone who chooses to transform their relationship with money. It's not just for the wealthy 1% or 10%. It's presented as a universal possibility, a truly liberating milestone to aim for.
So your money finally starts working for you, rather than you constantly having to work for money. That's the dream for many. And how do you actually calculate this passive income potential from your capital? The book mentions the 4% rule.
Yes, the 4% rule is a widely discussed and generally accepted guideline, often called a safe withdrawal rate, particularly within the financial independence community. It suggests that with a reasonably diversified portfolio, often a mix of stocks and bond funds, you can withdraw 4% of your total capital each year, and based on historical data, have a very high probability that the income will last for your lifetime, potentially even growing, while preserving your principal against inflation. It's often seen as just right. Withdrawing only 3% might be unnecessarily conservative for some, while 5% might carry a higher risk of depleting your funds too quickly, especially if you retire early. So, to illustrate simply, if you have $1,000 saved and consider it capital invested earning roughly 4% a year, that generates about $40 annually, or $3.33 of monthly investment income. Now, $3.33 sounds tiny initially, right? But the key is that these amounts compound and grow exponentially over time, especially when you're consistently adding to your capital.
And compounding, that's where the real magic happens over the long term, isn't it? Einstein supposedly called it the eighth wonder of the world.
It's incredibly powerful, yes. It underscores why even small, consistent savings can snowball into significant capital over decades. A common rule of thumb is that money growing at 7% per year will roughly double in about 10 years. At a more conservative 4% average return, your $100 would become $200 in about 18 years. Still powerful growth. But crucially, compounding also works in reverse for debt. That's why high credit card interest rates, often 12%, 18%, even 24% or more, are so destructive if you carry a balance. They work against you exponentially, trapping you deeper in debt. Understanding compounding, both positive and negative, is fundamental. This step really puts the power of positive compounding into perspective, showing you how to harness it systematically for your freedom.
And that wall chart we talked about earlier, the graph becomes absolutely central here for visualizing this progress towards the crossover point, right?
Yes, the wall chart is key. It's a simple line graph tracking your total monthly income and your total monthly expenses over time. Nina N's chart, for instance, would have shown her income line rising dramatically as she increased her value, while her expense line likely settled into a lower stable groove as she applied the principles. This creates a widening gap between the two lines. That gap represents her accumulating capital. Elaine H's chart similarly showed her expense line dropping significantly as she cut spending, while her income remained steady, again creating that crucial savings gap. The crossover point is the visually obvious culmination of these trends on the chart. It's the exact moment when your investment income line, which you calculate and add based on your growing capital and the 4% rule, crosses above your monthly expense line. That point signals the end of compulsory work. It transforms that vague concept of retirement someday into a tangible, foreseeable goalpost, which is incredibly motivating.
That's incredibly motivating, I agree. Seeing that point get closer month by month. Okay, so once you've reached this point, or more likely while you're actively working towards it, where do you actually put your money? Where do you invest this growing capital for long-term financial freedom? That's step 9. Where to stash your cash for long-term financial freedom. What's the underlying philosophy behind investing in this specific context?
Right. The philosophy here is distinctly different from traditional high finance investing. It's not about making a killing, hitting home runs, or constantly chasing higher returns in a more is better frenzy. Instead, the focus is on assuring enough, building a portfolio that will reliably generate sufficient income to cover your basic living expenses for the rest of your life. It's also about becoming knowledgeable and sophisticated enough about investing principles to free yourself from fear, costly mistakes, and potentially bad advice from salespeople disguised as advisors. It's about building true security and peace of mind.
Okay, that makes sense. Safety and sufficiency over chasing maximum gains. So what are some of the common investment options the book discusses for achieving this?
It covers several key, generally accessible options. First, bonds. These are essentially loans you make to governments or corporations. They're generally considered conservative, known for their guaranteed repayment of principal if held to maturity, and regular interest payments. The book also mentions things like revolving loan funds that allow you to invest locally or in developing countries, aligning your investments with your values. Second, mutual funds and exchange-traded funds, ETFs. These are baskets of stocks or bonds providing instant diversification, which reduces risk compared to buying individual stocks. Third, company retirement plans like 401ks in the U.S. and individual retirement accounts, IRAs. These are often highly recommended, especially early on. Why? Because many employers offer matching contributions, basically free money. If your employer matches, say, 6% of your salary, that's an immediate 100% return on your contribution up to that limit. Plus, these accounts offer significant tax advantages, allowing your investments to grow tax-deferred or even tax-free in some cases, like Roth accounts.
That employer match really is crucial. It's leaving money on the table if you don't take it. Okay, so what are the critical factors to consider when deciding how to allocate money among these options?
Two main factors are highlighted as particularly important: time horizon and fees. For time horizon, how long until you plan to rely on this money, younger individuals with decades before needing the funds can generally afford to take on more risk, often holding a higher percentage in stocks, for G maybe 90% stocks, 10% bonds, as they have time to recover from market downturns. Older individuals or those closer to needing the income typically shift towards capital preservation, holding more bonds, verging maybe 20% stocks, 80% bonds. However, the book notes that FEIers, people aiming for financial independence, often much earlier than traditional retirement age, tend to be more conservative with their allocations than conventional wisdom might suggest. Why? Because they prioritize confidence in their ongoing income stream, needing it to last potentially 40, 50, or more years, even through market volatility.
That makes sense. You need that reliability if you're leaving paid work early. And what about fees? How much do they really matter?
Fees matter enormously over the long term. It's astonishing how much they can erode your returns. High fees are often associated with actively managed mutual funds, where managers try to beat the market but often don't, or some types of financial advisors, especially those who charge a percentage of your assets under management each year. Even a seemingly small 1% or 2% annual fee can consume a massive chunk of your potential gains over decades due to the effect of compounding in reverse. That's precisely why low-cost index funds, which simply aim to track a broad market index like the S&P 500, have become such a favorite of FICERers. Their fees are minimal, often fractions of a percent, and historically they've delivered strong, long-term performance that most active managers fail to consistently beat. They are often seen as a cornerstone of a simple, effective FI investment strategy.
The book also touches on the historical context here, mentioning Joe Dominguez, one of the original authors, and his recommendation back in the day.
Yes, Joe Dominguez, the practical genius who developed many of these tools, started teaching this program back in 1980. At that time, interest rates on things like U.S. Treasury bonds were very high, sometimes double digits, so he initially recommended a very simple strategy focused heavily on these safe, high-yielding bonds, and tens of thousands of people actually achieved financial independence using this straightforward set-it-and-forget-it approach during that era. However, the book wisely includes a cautionary tale, the story of finding an old, yellowing Russian Tsarist bond from before the 1917 revolution, now completely worthless. It serves as a powerful reminder that no investment you make guarantees that geopolitical or economic conditions will not shift. Interest rates change, governments change, markets change. It reinforces the need to be knowledgeable, adaptable, and diversified, understanding risk beyond just the historical numbers on a spreadsheet.
So do people actually follow this kind of simple, low-cost index fund path today? What are some examples of real-life FI proponents in their strategies mentioned?
Yes, many modern FI figures advocate for very similar principles. J.L. Collins, author of the popular book The Simple Path to Wealth, famously boils down his advice to spend far less than you make and invest the remainder in Vanguard's Total Stock Market Index Fund, VTSAX. Very straightforward. The minimalists, Joshua Fields Milburn and Ryan Nicodemus, also talk about using index funds and low-cost brokers like Vanguard or Betterment. Another example given is Tammy the First. She splits her portfolio strategically. She invests the bulk in treasury bonds to generate enough guaranteed income to cover her absolute basic needs her enough. Then her cash, the extra savings beyond basics, which we'll discuss, goes into potentially higher growth but higher risk mutual and index funds her, and then some. This layered approach provides both baseline security and potential for further growth.
That later approach makes a lot of sense, securing the base first.
Yeah.
Okay, what about real estate? Is that commonly used as an FI strategy within this framework?
It definitely is for some, though it's generally presented as a more active strategy compared to passively holding index funds. Owning multifamily buildings, for instance, can provide significant long-term rental income. The book provides a practical checklist for evaluating potential rental properties, considering location, potential for appreciation, gross rent projections, and carefully estimating all expenses, repairs, utilities, HOA fees, property taxes, capital expenditures like new roofs, vacancy rates, and property management fees if you don't self-manage. It acknowledges that this typically requires substantial upfront capital and often involves more active management time and effort, making it less passive than index fund investing. The book is also careful to differentiate this long-term rental income strategy from flipping properties for quick profits. Flipping is often seen as too much work, too much risk for a stable FFI portfolio, and it can raise ethical concerns about potentially displacing long-term fixed income tenants. The goal here is reliable passive income streams, not necessarily chasing the highest short-term gains.
Right. The focus remains on sustainable income, not just quick profits. And people even invest in their own homes or land as part of their overall FI vision.
Absolutely. Investing in your own home's sustainability, like adding solar panels for renewable energy, or building farmstead infrastructure like extensive gardens, greenhouses, or barns if you're on land, can pay dividends for decades by significantly reducing your ongoing expenses and increasing your self-sufficiency. Kent and Beth's story is a great illustration. They were two highly paid professionals who left their demanding jobs to build a rural homestead. They cleverly used rentals, a mother-in-law apartment on their property, renting out their motorhome, even an outbuilding to completely pay their mortgage. In effect, they were generating wealth directly from their fertile soil and abundant water resources, turning their home into an income-producing asset that also aligned perfectly with their values. This simultaneously reduced their expenses and built their cash, which brings us nicely to one of the three crucial pillars of financial independence that go beyond just investment capital.
Ah, yes. That's a great segue. The book talks about the three pillars of financial independence, emphasizing that it's about more than just the money in your investment accounts. What are these three pillars?
Indeed. This is a really important concept. Beyond just the financial capital, which is the money that makes money for you, your accumulated savings and investments generating passive income, there are two other crucial pillars supporting true, resilient financial independence. The first of these is cushion. This is your liquid cash reserve, your emergency fund. It's the money readily available for unexpected events, job loss, medical bills, major car repairs, and also for the smooth flow of daily life. The book suggests aiming for about a half year's worth of living expenses in your cushion. It assures readers that by diligently following the program's steps, saving this amount becomes surprisingly achievable over time. It's your immediate safety net, providing peace of mind.
Okay, so capital cushion. What's the third pillar of this broader definition of wealth?
The third pillar is cash. This is described as the and then some. It's the wealth accumulated beyond what's needed to reach your crossover point. The money generated after your basic living expenses are reliably covered by your passive investment income from capital, and you have your safety net. Interestingly, when people leave paid employment after reaching FI, their expenses often drop significantly. No more commuting costs, work wardrobe expenses, expensive lunches out, etc. Their frugal FI habits often continue. Plus, durable goods purchased before FI, like a reliable car, camping gear, maybe an energy-efficient home, don't need immediate replacement. This means that passive income can actually start to pile up post-FI, building this cash. It's seen as a living resource, not something you necessarily plan to deplete. You can also intentionally build your cash through enjoyable side hustles, part-time passion work, or even new careers started after reaching FI if you choose.
So it's not just about the financial assets you hold, but also about having that buffer, that cushion, and then this ongoing potential for more than enough with the cash. That feels really robust and holistic.
It is. And it extends even further. The book implicitly includes two other non-financial yet vital pillars: skills and abilities and belonging, community. Lifelong learning and skill development are presented as key. Becoming Jacks and Jills of all trades through DIY projects, learning basic handyman skills like Ted Y in the book, who learned to fix his own car, saving thousands, or developing modern skills like hosting websites or blogging. This diversity of practical abilities is a form of wealth in itself. It builds incredible resilience. It empowers you to make extra money if needed, to do things for yourself and others, and to meet life's challenges with courage and resourcefulness. You're essentially investing in your own ability to survive and thrive, a form of self-insurance that no stock market crash can take away.
That makes so much sense, investing in yourself. And then there's the crucial human element, belonging and community. This feels more important than ever in today's world.
Absolutely essential. Our human bonds, love, loyalty, mutual support have always been fundamental to well-being. The book references the caring economy, coined by author Rian Eisler. This involves the informal exchange of favors, practical help, sharing resources, or simply offering a listening ear. This interdependence makes life not only less expensive, think babysitting co-ops, tool sharing, potlucks, but also significantly richer and more meaningful. This stands in contrast, the book notes, to the modern decline of some traditional community structures like lower church attendance, or fewer multi-generational households. Frugality within this framework isn't about lonely, stoic self-reliance. It's actually about discovering that you have more to give and more to enjoy than mere material possessions. It naturally leads towards what could be called financial interdependence, a deeper, more sustainable, and more fulfilling way of living, where your true wealth is measured not just in dollars, but in rich, reciprocal relationships and shared well-being.
Wow. Okay, so this whole journey sounds incredibly empowering and liberating, leading to this rich, multifaceted form of independence. But I can definitely imagine there might be a significant psychological hurdle right before someone fully crosses over into that financial independence. Is that what the book refers to as the crossover point jitters?
Yes, it's a very real phenomenon that the book addresses directly. They apparently received calls over the years from people who had mathematically reached FI, their numbers looked great, but they were suddenly terrified. They didn't know what to do with all that unstructured freedom after a lifetime of working. Many people apparently hit this strange wall of anxiety or angst just as they approach or even pass their crossover point. It can feel like a profound identity shift, almost like facing this vast, unknown ocean of time, especially after being conditioned for decades by the structure and routines of paid employment.
That's totally understandable. We're so conditioned to the structure of work, right? Having a boss, a schedule, colleagues, a defined role. How does the program help people reframe that potentially daunting future?
It helps significantly by reframing the future not as this vague, potentially empty concept of retirement, but rather by highlighting that you now have a limited, foreseeable length of time that you have to work for money, if any time at all. Knowing that endpoint is near or has arrived can be incredibly liberating in itself. Imagine the feeling of knowing you have potentially half your life ahead of you to fill as you will, not as you must. It's a fundamental shift from compulsory work driven by necessity to optional engagement driven by passion, purpose, curiosity, or service. You get to choose your activities based on what truly interests and fulfills you, not just what pays the bills.
And it's important to remember it's not always a one-and-done, retire-forever situation, right?
Right.
The book mentions the idea of sequential sabbaticals.
Exactly. FIRE, financial independence, retire early, isn't necessarily a rigid, one-size-fits-all path where you work intensely, hit a number, and then never earn another dollar. For some people, FI might mean working, saving aggressively, investing, then exiting paid employment for a period maybe for travel, further study, raising kids, or retooling skills only to potentially re-enter paid employment, perhaps part-time or in a different field months or years later. For others, it might look like being financially independent for 9 months of the year, then doing enjoyable seasonal work for the summer and repeating that cycle, or combining a baseline of FI with various passion projects or side hustles that generate some income. Sam's story from the book is a great example. He was a garbage collector, but knowing he only had a finite period of time left to work for money opened up the mental space for him to pursue his real dream, developing a sustainable homestead in Kansas. He eventually reached his crossover point and continued working, but now for his own dreams, not just for the paycheck. It's really about having choices and consciously designing your life with intention.
This entire 9-step program, then, from making peace with your past all the way through to navigating the crossover point and beyond, sounds like a truly comprehensive system for life design, centered around your relationship with money and time.
It truly is. The ultimate goal, as the book emphasizes, is to free you from financial worries, not just to hoard money, but to empower you to become a conscientious, loving, and knowledgeable steward of your life energy, your time, your skills, your attention, your money. The book is quite clear. There are no shorter shortcuts. This entire book, with all 9 steps, is the shortcut. It's presented as a whole systems approach that deeply integrates your personal finances with your values, your purpose, and your overall well-being. It essentially transforms you into the CEO of your own life, where the goal is maximizing the return you get in happiness and fulfillment for every hour of life energy spent. It's about optimizing your life, not just optimizing your investment portfolio or your budget spreadsheet.
That's a really powerful way to frame it. Optimizing your life, not just your ledger. And as we start to wrap up our conversation, I want to leave you, our listener, with a thought from the book that really resonated with me. It connects back to that wall chart we discussed, that simple visual representation of your monthly income and expenses over time. The book suggests that over time, as you follow these steps, your feelings about looking at your own chart will likely change dramatically. What might initially cause anxiety or discomfort can eventually become a source of immense pride, a representation of how well you are aligning your actions with your values, how consciously you are stewarding your life energy. So I have to ask you, the listener, directly,
How would you feel right now about hanging this graphic representation of your personal financial affairs, your income, your spending, maybe your net worth on your living room wall, right out there where everyone who comes into your house could see it? Would you feel totally at ease, or maybe a little uneasy, perhaps even deeply uncomfortable? The book suggests that the degree of your discomfort is actually a measure of the degree of your financial disease. But the encouraging part is that uneasiness can genuinely disappear as you follow the steps of this program, transforming that chart from something potentially scary into a source of clarity, confidence, and yes, even pride.
This journey is truly about transformation, and it's not necessarily about going it completely alone either. The book encourages using money talk questions, like the ones we've touched upon, as a tool for accelerated growth in what it calls the 4 I's: intelligence, integrity, independence, and interdependence. So perhaps reflect on these questions for yourself. What concrete steps are you putting in place now to ensure your financial well-being as you age? If you were in a pinch next month, what practical things could you do to make some extra money using your skills or resources? And maybe most importantly, what does financial independence truly mean to you personally? What would that freedom look like in your life? Remember, as the book beautifully puts it near the end, it's not the conditions of your life, but how you interact with them that will allow you to move forward. You can make skillful use of the wins you encounter and sail with them towards a life of greater purpose, alignment, and true financial freedom.